Well, everyone, welcome back to another Canada Immigration Live Q&A. We are not alone today, Alicia and I. We have a special guest. Deborah is with us. Deborah, thanks so much for coming to join us today.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful.
Deborah, we're really excited to have you, and we wanted to allow you to showcase your experience because you actually have a good news story for immigration. Is that right?
Yes. On the 23rd of January last month, I got my confirmation of a PR application.
That's awesome,
Yeah,
Deborah. And
it only took.
oh
Yeah,
yeah,
it
go
only
ahead.
took 4 months. Yeah, it took 4 months since I applied last year on the 23rd of August. So yeah.
Awesome. And maybe, Deborah, if you wanted to tell people a little bit about what happened when you first applied for your express entry application, because this was the second time, right? We worked together on this express entry application, but you'd tried to apply before, and maybe you can tell people what happened.
Yes. So I first applied on the 29th of August 2021. I submitted my application, and a month later, on September 28, 2021, I got a notification that my application got cancelled. I was shocked. I checked, and the only reason why it got cancelled is because my West evaluation for my degrees was not for immigration, and that really broke my heart. But then that's when I contacted your firm for consultation, and from there you helped me.
Yeah, and it's so heartbreaking too because they don't give you any chances, right? They didn't ask you to replace that document or
No,
say, here,
no.
you can just upload a new one, right?
Yeah, like I could have done it in 1 week, but no. And then what's worse is that after that, when I went back in the pool, the program stopped till last year, July. So that was really, it was a hard experience, but it's over now.
Yeah. So the good news is that we managed to have that profile in the pool. We made sure that you had an updated
Yeah,
education credential assessment, and then as soon as those draws
yeah,
happened, then right away you were able to get your application with that invitation to apply. So that was fantastic.
yeah. And I liked your approach in with your law firm because we went through every question together. There was no middleman between me and you. I had direct access to you. I think we went over like the entire application 3 times, and that really gave me confidence. Like I knew what was happening in my application, and yeah, it was an awesome experience.
Thank you so much for saying that, Deborah. I mean, we work a little bit differently than other law firms in that, we
Yeah,
sit down and we just keep going through things with our clients all the time. And I'm glad that it works for you. I'm glad it works for people who really care about getting their application right.
yeah. So I definitely recommend people to contact you.
Well, thank you so much, Deborah. Tell us a little bit about where you are and what you're going to do now that you just got word that you're a Canadian permanent resident.
So right now I'm in Ottawa, Ontario. So now that I have like full access to almost everything, I'm just trying to see if I could like um, continue like with the studies I started here. Because I had a bachelor here, so of course I'll have to like go a little bit more to school in order to further my education and eventually start the profession.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say it's really fantastic to see how hard you've been working, Deborah. Like you've been, a medical assistant and that's been through the pandemic. So hats off to you because you've been keeping everybody safe. And yeah, you've worked so hard to get through school and pay those international tuition fees. I think it's high time you're now a Canadian and you can just pay regular tuition fees. That's really good news.
Yes, I'm excited, and thank you very much to your firm. I already recommended my colleague. She's gonna contact you soon. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Deborah, for joining us. We really, really appreciate your story because lots of times all we talk about is the negative things that are happening. And so to
Yeah.
have you take the time, and it takes courage to come on a live immigration Q&A and share your story. So we really appreciate you taking the time to do that. And yeah, so we wish you all the very, very best in your journey now that you're a Canadian permanent
Yes.
resident.
Yeah, and I would like to encourage Mark, because how I got to know about the firm is during like when the TR to PR program came out. Mark was here every day, giving us updates and stuff. So I was following. It's just that I didn't qualify for TR to PR, so I went the other way. And when I hit the wall, I knew to come back to you.
Yes. Well, we're just so happy to be a part of your journey. Thank you so much,
Yes.
Deborah.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay. Take care.
Okay. Yeah. Bye.
All right. Well, that's great. Well, that was kind of fun. Hey, Alicia, we're going to
Yeah,
try to do
Deborah's so
this a little
lovely.
bit more. Sorry, go ahead,
Perfect.
Alicia.
Oh, I was just going to say, Deborah's a really lovely person, and I'm really glad that she's got that good news story. And yes, it was fast processing, thankfully, 4 months since we submitted the application complete EAPR. And the good news is that even though there was that long hiatus of no draws, they did process her application in a timely fashion. So it's a good news story at the end.
That's awesome. And, we are starting to see that the rounds of invitations, when they are extended, we're starting to see a little bit more, although yesterday's was a little unique. And I talked a little bit about the rounds of invitations in my live stream yesterday, but I thought I'd just pull it up just to remind everybody. Let's see if we've got this lined up right. So the rounds of invitations. So yesterday they reverted back to a PNP only draw, right, Alicia?
Yeah, this is the first one we've seen for a long time. They've been doing, the draws that were no program specified since last July. And then all of a sudden now, well, we had that blip where we changed over from NOC 2016 to NOC 2021 with the new tier system. And then that threw a wrench in the works. And so everything was shut down. And then they tried to do a new draw, but there was glitches in the system. And now we're back, I guess, to a PNP only draw. And so this is unique in that only people who are actually being nominated by the province are able to get one of these invitations. It was a small draw, 893 invitations were sent out. And if we look at that CRS, the reason it's so high, of course, 733, is because anybody who gets a provincial nomination gets 600 points. So their base points would have been, somewhere around 133, which is actually fairly low.
Mm-hmm. And so the question becomes, you guys, what will they do? So as I talked about yesterday, we've gone through a series of no program specified draws. And before that, it was a string of just PNPs. And if we go back to a previous era, in fact, the last time they did a Canadian experience class, you will see that there was a pattern previously where they did CEC, and then immediately following the CEC, they it's bounced around. But if you look here, you can see provincial nominee August the 18th, and then what came right the day later, Canadian experience class. August the 4th, PNP. August 5th, CEC. So who knows, Alicia? It's entirely possible that we could see another round of invitations today. So, maybe it'll be a CEC only. We'll just have to see how it plays out. Now, yes, there's individuals like Rowena here who says, disappointing. Why PNP, not CEC? What do you think, Alicia?
Well, I think it's because there was that, at least, from December all the way on, where they didn't actually have any draws. And what has been happening is that the provinces are still nominating people. And so it's building up this backlog of the provinces saying, hey, we still want to settle people locally. So the federal government is facilitating that and saying, okay, well, at least we'll do a PNP specified draw. And that way applications can still continue to move. And yeah, maybe Mark, there will, fingers crossed, hopefully be a CEC draw maybe this week, maybe today. We
Yep,
hope.
Absolutely. It's entirely possible. And if you do see it, like I'll tell you guys, Igor actually beat you guys all to the punch last time because he sent me a message on Teams the moment that there was a round of invitation. And so we were able to talk about it right in the midst of the live. But I'll challenge you guys to keep an eye out. And if you do see that there is a draw that's announced during our live, let me know and we'll jump over there and take a look at it in real time, virtually. So awesome, awesome. All right, so we have a couple questions. Here's another one that maybe I'll have see if you can answer this one, Alicia. So Yash says it's been 6 months waiting for the PR card. Yesterday, I got hold of someone on the phone. I'm assuming it's the call center, and I was told that the card has been sent to processing center. What advice? Please advise. What does processing center mean? Like, what a goofy comment.
Yeah, I mean, they should be sending you directly that PR card. So I guess they're saying that they're sending it to a processing center who will then send it to you. So the key is making sure that you have your correct address updated with immigration, and hopefully that card will be coming in the mail directly to you.
Yes. Okay, next question is from Shahir. He says, in the EAPR, do I need to translate the passport entry and exits that aren't in English?
Yeah.
And he also will add one other little comment we can answer about both of them. Also, in case the graduation certificate in English, but stamps in Arabic, do I need to translate the Arabic stamps? So what is your position? And there's a lot of different approaches that people take to this, but what is your position on this, Alicia?
Yeah, my position is try to remove the risk, right? So if there's any document that you have that is largely in English or French, but it has stamps or it has sections of it that are not translated into English or French, or the original document wasn't in English or French, get a certified translation for, excuse me, the sections that are not in English or French. So if you've got Arabic stamps, just play it safe, go get a certified translator to make sure that they just translate those stamps on there and say what it is in English. And then that way you remove the risk.
Yes, that's wise, very wise. Okay, Armin says hello. Good to see you as well, Armin. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, Yagnesh says, hi, Mark and Alicia. My proof of funds account is jointly held with my parents. So is it okay to remove their names before getting the letter from the bank rather than taking NOC? Is it legit? Not quite sure what NOC stands for. Is it legit? So what would you recommend, Alicia, in this situation when someone has jointly held funds with parents?
Mm-hmm. So depending on which country you're holding those funds in, I mean, normally what happens in a jointly held bank account is if both of you are signatories, if you're both joint account holders with the bank, then either of you could technically come in and withdraw all the money. And so immigration is a little bit wary about situations if you are on that account with parents rather than a spouse. It's a little bit of a different situation. And so I would say talk to your parents and make sure that it is fine with them, that if the money is actually yours, that you make sure that that money is in your name. And sometimes you might need to get a gift deed. So if they're actually gifting you that money, if it wasn't really yours all to have on your own, and they're actually giving you a gift of those funds, then to make sure that in addition to updating just your name on the account, that your parents write a letter and that they have a notarized gift deed that says, we have given our child X amount of dollars, we did this, and under oath, they are saying that this is the legitimate state of affairs. It's not a loan, there's no repayment owing, and that money is yours to do with as you need so that you can settle in Canada.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. All right. Next, okay, so here's a tricky one. So Eric says, I was accused of misrep in the US. Do I still stand a chance to apply for a study permit? So what do you think, Alicia? Is there, the impact of misrepresentation in a US visa application? Obviously, if the application was rejected, there's an obligation to disclose that to IRCC. But what are your feelings on that?
Yeah, and again, this is, I can't give legal advice because I have no idea about the ins and outs of your situation or exactly what happened. So I would always say, make sure to book a consultation so we can give you a proper opinion about what we think the impact of that misrep in the US will be. But in general, if we're looking at misrepresentation, it is one of those things that governments share, right? Especially between Canada and the US. So if immigration officials go through and they see, oh, wait a minute, we've got a misrep finding in the US, we've got a refusal in the US, they're going to want to know more about what happened. So generally, it's a matter of getting documentation, getting a letter of explanation put together about exactly what happened and why and how. And keep in mind that for temporary applications to Canada, so you're talking visitor visa applications or study permits or work permits, you've got to prove that you have a temporary intent to come to Canada only as long as you're authorized to be here temporarily. And if you've got a misrep in the US, then that's a factor that immigration officers can use against you to say, well, if you weren't being truthful to another government, maybe you're not being truthful to this government, or maybe there was an overstay situation. So it is something that you can't just hide or brush under the carpet. You're going to need to deal with head on if you're looking at immigrating to Canada.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. All right. So let's go to, we'll pull up David here. So David says, good morning, Mark and Alicia. What can you tell about the Agri-food pilot program? Is it quicker than AOS? So the Agri-food pilot, David, knowing your situation, if your employer was on board, it is possible to go through that. As a specialized livestock worker, you're on the list, you've seen that. But the question that you ask is one that I'm not able to answer. You say, is it quicker than AOS? Well, the reality is I look at this and I compare this to any of the PR portal applications. And when we file, I've had PNPs like yours after the Alberta nominee program has approved it. The PNPs, the processing times are really, really high on the government website, but we've seen others come back relatively quickly. So apparently there's two different streams, and if they funnel yours to one that they feel isn't really high risk or one that's easy to approve, then sometimes we see approvals really quick. But in other times, things can languish, I should say. But when it comes to the Agri-food pilot program, processing times are not listed online, and so it's really hard to tell exactly which one would be fastest. Now, obviously, you've got one option in the queue, and I'm happy to explore that with you a little bit further. But there's limited numbers that they allow each year, and those caps are not always readily published in a timely fashion, and that's the biggest problem, because it just takes so long for them to do anything with respect to processing. Lots of priority is placed for express entry because they have actual service level standards that they have to adhere to, or theoretically. So they put tons of effort into those, as well as spousal sponsorships. But other applications like the PNPs, like the Rural Northern Immigration Program, that was originally supposed to be 6 months, is now over a year. These programs are definitely they're kind of left behind to some extent, and they're not given the same level of priority. So I can't tell 100%, David, one way or another, but we can definitely explore that a little bit later. Okay, let's see here. Okay, here's one for you, Alicia. This is from Venkat. He says, my CRS score is 395 and I have 3 years of Canadian experience and still working here, LMIA exempt. Any scope for ITA sooner?
Well, I mean, I guess we'll see what happens with the spring and these targeted draws. So maybe there will be some sort of shift or switch to prioritizing Canadian work experience, or people that already have a Canadian job, or a job offer from a Canadian employer. So maybe there will be something like that that comes up. But for now, the minister's holding his cards tight, and he hasn't said exactly what's going to be happening with these targeted draws. They did say, and I guess the good news is that they did say that they will be announcing what their economic objective is when they do the targeted draws. So they will say something about, here's the economic objective, and then they're going to issue the draw. So at least, and I don't know what the time lag between that and the draw will be, but at least there will be some indication.
Yeah. All right. Yagnesh says, thank you very much, Alicia. Really appreciate it. Okay, let's jump to Armin. And Armin, I'm going to ring this one right off the bat and tell you to book a consultation, but let's just touch on this just at a high level. So postgrad expired expired May 2022, applied for visitor record before the work permit expired, so maintained status, applied for work permit under the new policy in September 2022, interim work permit expires in May 2023. Can I work after May 2023 while the work permit is being processed?
All right, so yes, for sure, book a consult. I can't give you legal advice with, 3 lines of facts, circumstances. But in general, if your postgrad work permit expired and you move to visitor status under the old world, if you are under visitor status and you're no longer under a work permit, then you no longer have interim authorization to work or implied status or maintained status. However, because they implemented this crazy temporary public policy with these interim work authorization emails, then there's an argument to be made that, hey, you would be allowed to work once you've submitted that public policy work permit in September 2022. And the government has said everybody who submitted that public policy work permit and is under the program should be able to have that work authorization until May 2023. That's what they've said. So it only makes sense that you should hopefully be able to rely on what immigration has told you, theoretically. But after May 2023, there would be no maintained status, right? There's no interim authorization to work because they've only given you that as this crazy exceptional method on a one-time deal. So I would say conservatively, no, there's nothing that would say that you're allowed to work after May 2023 if you haven't actually received your open public policy work permit by that time.
Perfect. Okay. Venkat says, thanks for the information. And Yella says, hey, Mark and Alicia, I just want to share my happiness. I'm a permanent resident now, TR to PR. Thank you for the course. I will we'll put some applause in here. Congratulations, Daniela. That is so awesome. We're so happy for you. Those of you who are wondering what Daniela is talking about, if you go to the Canadian Immigration Institute page here and you go to our courses here and you just scroll down, you will see that as you're scrolling, the TR to PR pathway course is no longer on here. And there's a reason for that, because the program closed. So we do a ton of different programs and things that come and then go, and the courses serve a short-lived purpose. And I am so happy for Aniela. For those of you who are wondering how to access this, all you have to do, if you're on YouTube or in any of the other platforms, all you have to do is scroll down and you can see the list of courses and just click on them. Express entry, study permit, spousal, postgrad 18-month course. This one is now officially over as well. LMIA, QET course, which is still going. So this one we can probably remove from here. But the Express Entry Masterclass, that program is actually starting on Monday. So if you want to join the masterclass, I have created a special time to accommodate all of you guys that are in Canada, because the numbers of people that are actually subscribing to the course is now the in-Canada applicants are outstripping the outside of Canada. So I usually do it from 4 to 5 p.m. Mountain Time, but I've decided to change it this year, through the month of February. And each of the courses that we have coming in February, the study permit course, the spousal sponsorship course, we're going to have a start time of 7 p.m. every evening from Monday through Thursday. So the Express Entry one is coming, and that'll be on Monday. So if you haven't had a chance, make sure that you click on there and join. And yes, Aniela, I loved that. And I loved that tier to peer. And yes, every single night we were going live. It was fast and furious. And we're just so happy that things worked out for you. So awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, let's see who's next here. Okay, so this question is also from Shahir. He says, the whole amount of proof of funds will be deposited one time in the account. Should I provide justification in advance or wait for a response from IRCC? Oh my goodness.
I think we could crowdsource this one. Does anybody recommend waiting for a response from IRCC? No, so never wait for a response from IRCC, because just like Deborah and her experience, when she did one thing wrong and she submitted a document and it didn't have the right exact title on that, it wasn't the right WES certificate for immigration purposes specifically, it's not as though immigration even writes to you. They don't give you a second They don't tell you to correct the document. They just completely cancel your application or refuse it. And so there is no way to provide a justification in most circumstances. You basically have to have made sure that that application is as perfect as you can get it before you submit it. And if there's anything that's unique or strange about your application, do a really good job about your letter of explanation and make sure that it's clear to you and to the officer what's going on in terms of proof of funds, where that money came from, how long it was there, why you have it now, what are the source of those funds.
Perfect. Thank you. And then David had a little follow-up. He says, thanks for the answer. I appreciate it. I noticed there are only 50 applicants per year on my tier code. Exactly. But I can't find how many are still available. Exactly. And that's why, David, that's why, I really shy away from the program when I have another option, because we could go through all that work. We could get the application submitted and then realize that, it's met the cap. And at this stage, I'm uncertain exactly how IRCC is managing that. And so, that's the reason we definitely didn't consider that one off the top. All right. Amir says, thank you. You're very welcome, Amir. Salim, it's good to see you. Thanks for connecting in. Okay. Alan says, any hope on express entry draw today? Are we going to have a draw today, Alicia?
Well, it's 12:30. I mean, usually the draws happen around early afternoon. They don't normally go public with it. So if somebody happens to have received an invitation to apply, normally people get those ITAs and then they do the posting showing that it's the draw happened, the round of invitations happened. So if anybody happens to have gotten an invitation to apply, we'd love to know. Let us know.
Indeed. So as of now, when we go to the website, we take a look. It is just showing yesterday, February the 1st, draw 239. So we'll say at this stage, not yet. And I think it's probably unlikely. Although I have seen some draws get released later in the day too. So, all right. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Dana says, what does it mean when I receive ghost update for PR application without an email? Is it a good sign?
I'm assuming that you mean that you've gotten the same email that says not a lot from IRCC, but I'm not sure exactly what you mean by ghost update without an
Yeah.
email, Mark.
Yeah. So these ghost updates, I like what you've thrown me off is without an email. Well, sometimes we get notifications that say there's been an update on your file, and then you go check and then you see. So I'm not exactly sure either what you mean without an email. What an update often means is that an officer is working in the background on your file. And sometimes, when they take certain steps or they move along certain processes, sometimes they will, and I can't confirm this 100%, but in my mind, I think maybe what happens sometimes is that they start the process for making a request, but then they cancel it or they backtrack, and the system doesn't always recognize that kind of reversal of a step. In other times, it could be that your application is moving forward, but but there isn't really any action on your part. No one, at least to my knowledge at this stage, has been able to officially confirm what these things are, because the government system is a mess. And people were receiving invitations to apply when they had 2 or 3 months of Canadian experience under the Canadian experience class. They were considered eligible. So there's lots of problems with the IRCC secure account and the whole portal. So yes, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But any movement is good movement, Dana. Any movement is definitely good movement.
Yeah, I will add a little anecdote on a spousal application that I helped a couple file. So, spousal sponsorship application, it was an in Canada application. That application, of course, had to be submitted through the new PR portal, and it was submitted. And then instead of getting an acknowledgement of receipt letter with an actual file number, unfortunately, the couple got a temporary file number, right? So immigration has waited a few months, hasn't assigned anybody to review it for eligibility and admissibility. They just assign this temporary file number that starts with an X. And then they send an email saying, here's a list of common things that people forget to attach. but they're not actually asking for any documents, and they don't actually give any more information. And the couple in this case received that same email 3 times with the temporary file number, just saying, here's a list of common documents people forget to attach, but nothing else to do. So maybe it's a situation kind of like that, where there seems to be weird glitches in the system, but no actual file number yet. I don't know what's going on with IRCC.
I hear you. Okay, Mary says, I think you missed my text. Okay, so one thing I want to clarify with everybody is that there will be some questions that you will ask that we don't have an answer to. So that's why I don't pull them up. But I'll pull yours up, Mary, and there's a reason I skipped past it. So Mary says, I've applied for the OINP under the International Student Stream job offer. My score is 61. Is there any chance to get an invitation? This is something that is very, very difficult for Alicia or I to be able to answer. The OINP has a number of factors at play when they're trying to decide who is going to get those precious, precious spots. Remember, over 49% of all international students go to Ontario, and there are only so many spots available. And it depends upon the volume of students that are applying. And remember, individuals who have high comprehensive ranking system scores through express entry, who are sitting there, who haven't been drawn, who decide to apply through programs like this, and then get an invitation to apply, well, what happens is the moment they get that ITA, their profile is locked, and then the OINP sends a little message saying, hey, we see that your profile is locked. Maybe you've got an ITA. Do you still want to proceed? And so it causes lots of confusion within the ranks of this particular program when individuals have two options going at the same time. And maybe they did get one of those approvals through the International Student Stream, or they were in the process of having their application adjudicated, and then it all stalls out and falls apart. And so it's really, really hard to predict. And that's part of the reason why we don't. So some of you, just because you post a question, you guys, doesn't mean that we're going to be able to answer and provide assistance. So for example, we have, let's see here. So we've got Pagal here, for instance, and I want to pull Pagal up because they're on the Canadian Immigration Institute Facebook page. Says, how are you? I'm from Pakistan. Can you help me? And so when we get questions like that, the natural response always is for me to ring this bell here, slide over to our page, and all you have to do is click the link in the description below to book a consult easily by clicking on Speak to a Lawyer. You'll be taken right here. And if you're wondering, what are these consultations all about? What's Holthe Immigration Law all about? Well, just check out our Google ratings and see what our clients are saying about their experience working with us, such as Deborah, who joined us at the beginning of this live video. So there is not, if you need a work permit, and even if you're saying your WhatsApp number, please, I'm not going to pull this up, Pagal. You don't want to post that anywhere, your confidential information, but all you have to do is click on the link and book a consult, and then we can help you with your specific immigration question. Okay. All right. Shahir says, thank you so much. And let's see. Okay, we've got Catherine. Catherine says, any chance for 517 after C19 in June? So Catherine's, apparently everybody's thinking it's June, which is probably not a bad decision given the fact the draws, the no program specified draws were supposed to open in, what was it, the summer, or was it the spring? I can't remember
Summer.
what it was, but anyways, it was the very tail end of the window that the minister had indicated. And so, not surprising, spring goes into June, so maybe June, but 517 after C19. What do you think, Alicia?
I mean, I would, if you have a 517 CRS, that even if they do targeted draws, that they will still be giving invitations to apply to candidates who are highly ranked on the regular human capital and adaptability factors and everything else. I would hope. Maybe they will do a targeted draw where everybody has to have, I don't know, a certain knock or maybe a certain level of work experience in Canada, but they might just say, you know what, we're going to do a draw of 4,000 and 2,000 of those people are going to have a particular kind of skill set or background. And hopefully they'll still continue with high CRS. I mean, if you've got 517, that is a very healthy CRS score. And I would really hope that you get an invitation to apply.
Yes. All right. Ninki says, just received the medical exemption email from IRCC. Got my heart racing a little bit because I was hoping for a CEC draw. So that's interesting. All right. And then we've got a question from our good friend Ami here. He says, hi, Mark, do we need to continue with the same profession or can we switch to something else after becoming a landed permanent resident?
Yeah, so in Canada, we have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and once you are a full Canadian permanent resident, so once you have that electronic confirmation of permanent residence signed off or an actual confirmation of permanent residence signed off by that IRCC officer, you're in, you're done, you're a Canadian permanent resident. Now what you need to do is maintain your residency obligation under Section 28. So that means that you need to continue to physically reside in Canada for within that first 5-year period after you get your ECOPR. You've got to make sure that you can prove residence for at least 730 days. But other than that, you don't have to stay in any particular job or work for any particular employer or even stay in any particular province. You've got mobility rights, you have all the normal rights of association and, work and the ability to work wherever you like, as long as you maintain that residency obligation. So as long as you're somewhere in Canada for 730 days in those first 5 years, you can work in whatever job you like.
Perfect. All right. This one is Ragav, and he's asking for a little bit of prognostication. What are your views on the PNP only draw? Do you think it was conducted because there are still glitches in the regular system, or does it hint towards a different approach?
I would say it could be both, in my opinion. I think they are still trying to iron out those glitches. I've heard anecdotally that there are some people who mistakenly didn't get an invitation to apply, even though they were over 500, and they're still stuck. They're still in limbo because there hasn't been another proper draw. So I think it's possibly because those glitches are still in the system, but maybe, as Mark said, they're reverting to that old pattern where they kind of alternate back in the normal world, right? Before we had all the pandemic shutdowns, they would alternate with the PNP draw and the CEC draw during part of that pandemic. So maybe they're going back to that kind of draw.
Yes. All right. I'm going to pull up Sanchit here. He says, hey, Mark and Alicia, I'm getting 50 points for a certificate of qualification, although I am a commercial pilot, not eligible for FST. Does the pilot license count as a C of Q, even though I am a CAC candidate? So I can probably step in on this one, Alicia. Sanchit, the only reason you're getting points is because you answered yes to the question. So no, pilot's license isn't a certificate of qualification. So in your profile, when you were completing it, I think you checked off yes on that box, and that's why it's giving you the 50 points.
And you shouldn't, Sanjit. You should go back, check no, because take a look. The federal skilled trades occupations are certain major groups. So it's only if you have a national occupation classification code that starts with those digits that you would say yes. And then the system's automatically going to give you those points if you've claimed them. However, if you're a pilot and not one of those other groups, because I did look it up, there's certain central control process operators, aircraft assembly assemblers under major group 93. But if you're not one of those people, then you don't fall under the federal skilled trades. So just make sure to go back and fix your express entry profile.
All right, Jackson. Hey, to you too.
It's very Canadian.
Rayon says, hey, Mark and Alicia. I am an open work permit and I'm on an open work permit and recently got an offer from a US-based firm to work for their client bank in Canada. There would be a contract for at least 12 months. Will it be counted in as Canadian work experience? I will promptly ring that bell. We need a whole lot more information. Book a consultation because this is a huge, huge issue for you, Rayon. The reality is, as you're going through this process, if you guess wrong and you say, or you feel like, yes, it can be counted, and then you file an express entry application and they reject it, well, the reality is you've lost all that time. And so we would definitely need a whole lot more information before we could say, yeah, it would count, or no, it wouldn't. Now, with that being said, we've had a fair amount of experience dealing with this question. It comes up quite frequently. But I don't know if you have any specific thing, any specific information to add to it, Alicia, that would benefit people generally in this type of a situation.
Yeah, and I have had a few consults of people trying to figure out how to claim or whether they can claim Canadian work experience. And especially for the PNP programs, for the provincial nominees, a lot of the provinces require that you're actually working in the province. And there's good things and bad things about digitization and remote work and telework. And one of the tricky things these days is a lot of companies, even if they're Canadian-based companies, sometimes have teleworkers, right? So even though they have a head office in Toronto, they say, yeah, sure, we can say on your contract that you're going to be based in Calgary, Alberta. And that's fine, but that's probably not going to meet the requirements for most of the provincial nominee programs. So most of the provincial nominee programs require you to actually have a place of business. The company has to have a place of business. They have to have a provincial registration. They have to have a business license. They have to show that they have employees who are actually working in that location. And so this teleworking is a difficult thing, especially if you're looking at a US-based firm. And so if your employer of record is not a Canadian employer, then right away, generally that causes a whole bunch of problems because you're not on payroll with a Canadian employer.
And as always, book a consult and let us help you sort that out. Okay, Isaac asks, hello, Mark. About police certificates, the Canada immigration site says, for Mexico, I do not need, I think, to submit a police certificate, that they will do it on my behalf once I submit my PR application. Is this true? And then he just clarifies, I meant for Mexicans outside of Mexico.
Mm-hmm. And Isaac, I've had a few Mexican clients who've been outside of Mexico who've been struggling with making sure that they're trying to get that Mexican police certificate properly. And what Mark and I always suggest is going on to that IRCC How to Get a Police Certificate website, and then do the drop down for Mexico, take a screenshot of that page and include it in your application when you're doing your express entry. If you're doing your express entry, make sure that you have referred the immigration officer to that so that, if the officer maybe hasn't seen a Mexican police certificate or maybe doesn't realize that IRCC normally has to initiate that request, then you've just kind of highlighted that information for them. And then yes, once the process is initiated, then you do have to follow up and go and submit the documentation in order for that Mexican police certificate to be properly issued.
Excellent. All right, hot off the press, you guys. No, it's not a round of invitations, but Igor is always screening and scanning through all of the reams of information on immigration from the government website to help us announce some really new developments. What is the latest development? Well, the latest development is not the person that's trying to call me on my phone right now, that's pretty fun development. We'll leave that there. The new development is that there will be a third accepted English language testing association. So you can see here, CELPIP, who is administered, CELPIP is administered by Paragon Testing Enterprises, Inc. And you can see it has information on here. And that reminds me, those of you who are not aware, let's go here and take a look at podcast. If you go to the podcast, you guys have to go check this out. I forgot to let everybody know. The latest episode was test taking tips from an English teacher, CELPIP. And this is the official guide who is providing this information. And her name was Brandy Robb. She's a CELPIP test instructor with CELPIP itself. So you've got to go check this out. If you haven't listened to it, it was a lot of fun. My latest podcast episodes, go head over there and check that out. But what we have now is IELTS, CELPIP, and a brand new one. There's IELTS. It is called PTE, the Pearson's Test of English. So it's anticipated to be accepted by IRCC as of late 2023. We'll definitely have to get this organization on as well to talk about who they are and what they do. But thanks, Igor, for sharing that little update. And of course, the French language tests will continue to be the TCF, and there's also TEF associated with the French language as well. But that is, hot off the press, you guys. Language testing organization for English, number 3. Okay, so back to the question once again, just on the Mexican situation, just to show you guys, if you're wondering what the requirements are, you can go to this link, find out how to get a police certificate. And when you search it up, and so if we'll just jump down here to Mexico, pull this up, and it will give specific instructions on what you need to do. So this is something I always watch for. You need to make sure whatever document you have that it uses this name. If it doesn't, then you need to do some investigation to make sure it's the correct one. All right. You can see here, it will also tell you if you need it. So for Mexico, it says you don't need to provide a police certificate with your application. We'll send you a letter, and you must bring that letter when you apply for a police certificate. Now, I'll point out something else. Sometimes the instructions are really confusing. And one of the challenges, if you look here, let's go to Hong Kong and I'll show you, because I was just looking at this with a client the other day and I'm still a little bit confused. So Hong Kong SAR, find out how to apply. So name of document. Okay, so here's the thing. This is what's confusing. It says you must provide a police certificate when you apply for permanent residence in Canada and for some temporary residence programs. But then it says IRCC will send you a letter requesting a police certificate after you send us your application if a Hong Kong police certificate is required. So I don't know, Alicia, if you've had any recent interactions with this, but it's completely contradictory. So, yeah. And in order to do it, you must include a letter when you apply. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I did one for a client under the Hong Kong permanent residence pathway, but it was a number of months ago now, and the instructions have changed since that. So it is tricky. I always tell people if there's ambiguity or if you happen to have a family member that's still in the country and you can go to a local authority to see if they can initiate that police request if you're not there. Sometimes that's a way, and then you can write a letter of explanation and just say, here's what I've tried, here's what the instructions say, they're not clear, I've tried to assist and get the assistance of my family members, and here's what they were able to obtain for me given I gave authorization, and here's my personal information from that local police search. So sometimes that's what we've tried.
Yeah. And so just going back to this one, if you see there's confusion in any way, then like Alicia said, what you always will do is we'll go ahead and try to get one anyways, if you can. Then when you upload it, you have a clear letter of explanation that includes a copy of this exact report at the beginning, before you even get to the police clearance certificate. Bundle that at the very end, and you say, please note, your instructions are confusing. I wasn't sure what to do. These are the steps I've taken, like Alicia said, to protect yourself. So the last thing, that what you want is to see IRCC reject an application because you didn't provide it when it says you must provide it here, but yet at the same time, they're telling you you actually can't get it until they get the letter. So it's the classic chicken and the egg situation. Round and round we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other reason, Mark, I wanted to say, the other reason that we recommend going and taking a screenshot of whatever IRCC has said on their page is because they change what they say on their pages. And police certificates are one of the top reasons that express entry applicants get refused. So if there is any tiny little error in those police certificates, that can get refused. If you've gone on and you've taken a screenshot of what immigration's instructions were at the time that you submitted your EAPR, well, then guess what? You might have a really good argument if you need to take that to a judicial review, because you actually have evidence of what immigration said at the time that you submitted your application. And if you followed immigration's instructions and they've still refused you, then if you take that to federal court and you make that argument to a judge, there's at least a chance that they will agree with you and say, hey, that's not fair. But you need to have the evidence to back it up.
Okay, we'll pull Dinesh's question up here. He says, this info says PTE, I'm assuming part-time experience, I'm going out on a limb, is accepted. Does this apply for both PR and study permit? Do you know what PTE would stand for?
It might be the Pearson's test of English that we were just talking about, which they abbreviate as PTE, but Igor noted that it's only as of late 2023, so they haven't implemented that new language testing yet. So Dinesh, if you mean the new Pearson's Test of English, that's what you mean by PTE.
Okay.
Just be careful because it's not yet accepted. They've just said that they will accept it sometime later this year.
Yes. Okay. All right. Let's jump to the next question. So Nafi says, so I have 1 year of, oh, this is a classic one, Alicia. I have 1 year full and then 11.5 months, but the system is giving me points for 2 years. I got laid off. What do I do now?
And so these are tricky situations. We've heard about a whole bunch of tech layoffs, right? I was talking with somebody yesterday who was in an unfortunate situation of their company got an LMIA for them and brought them here, and then all of a sudden laid them off, and right before they had their 1 year, and it's just awful. And so if you have Canadian experience, I'm not sure, Nafi, if you're saying this is in Canada or outside Canada, but assuming you're inside Canada and you're looking at Canadian work experience, then you do need to look at every week that you have had at least 30 hours of high skilled work experience. You can't count more than 30 hours in any given week, and it's got to add up to 52 weeks over the course of a 2-year period. If you're looking at 2 years of work experience, it's got to add up to 24 months over, a similar course of time. So if you don't yet have the full time, if you only have 11.5 months, if you're 2.5 weeks or 3 weeks short, then the risk is that you could possibly accept an invitation to apply if they gave you those points, and then an officer takes a look and says, wait a minute, you don't actually have the number of weeks to make up that points assessment. And if that's true, you're going to get refused. So these are really tricky situations. If you have an open work permit, if you are able to find a new employer and it's high skilled work, so make sure that you're in tier 0, 1, 2, or 3, and build up another half of a month of work experience, or however many weeks you've calculated that you need. That is the safest thing to do for sure. And then get letters of kind of attestation from your employers about what your job was for each of those roles, and be able to back it up with payroll records as well.
Thank you. All right. Hey, we've got Bright here. He says, hello, Mark and Alicia. It's been a while since I showed up here. Hope you're all doing good. We're doing great, Bright. Great to see you. Okay. Ragav says, I have been in the pool since 2022. Any realistic calculations on by when we should expect an ITA? Which month? So 483 is what he says. What do you think, Alicia?
Ugh, it has been so tough recently, Mark. Like, we thought we were on a roll with those regular draws, and then the tier changeover happened, and then no draws, and then we were hoping they'd start again with regular draws, and then they did a PNP. So, had they continued with some sort of regular pattern, then maybe we would have been able to project out a few months. But then the other wild card that's coming in are these targeted draws. So it is really difficult to say when a straight CRS at 483 might happen again. I would hope by sometime, later this year, but we really have to see what plays out with those targeted draws and what kind of economic reasons they are giving when they're doing those draws.
Yes. All right. RG, he says he's still healing from the trauma of the whole PR process, but it's worth it. And that's right, RG. He says, keep at it, folks. And thank you, Mark and Alicia, for all you do. Are very, very welcome. Okay. Okay. Spider-Man, good to see you. Says, hi, Mark. Do I need reference letters for previous jobs that give me no points for CEC, but are listed in the application? Thanks.
So one thing I'd really recommend is that you hire us to help you go through this in detail. But if you can't afford that, then the other thing that we do have, Mark has poured a whole bunch of his time and energy into this, is creating a course. And one of the key things that we cover in this Express Entry course is, what kind of work experience are you putting in your Express Entry profile? And it's important to keep in mind that you don't have to put in every single job you've ever done in your Express Entry profile to claim them for points. You do have to put everything you have done in your personal history, which is a different ball of wax. So be careful what you put as claimed points in your work history. Anything that you put in your work history as something you're relying on for points is going to pop up. If and when you get an invitation to apply, you're going to have to justify it and upload supporting documentation in your records of employment. But if you don't need those old jobs and it's just something you're going to disclose in your personal history, that might be okay as well. So be careful about how you structure your profile. It is something that's super important to set you up properly. Mark and I love working with people before they have submitted their express entry
Yes.
profiles because we can make sure you do it right the first time.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'm showing everybody, if you're watching in the background, was this is the exact course, the express entry course. Lesson 43, yes, 43 is all about records of employment. And when you scroll down, you can see there's a video itself talking all about it, how you get your records, your letters, how you prove your work experience, all those kinds of things. This alone is 23 minutes, just this single lesson. And as you scroll down, a bunch of information, instructions here. But if you look at the bottom, you can see we have a ton of downloads of documents, FSW, CEC hours of work tools, record of employment checklist. What if I can't get a reference letter? Sample reference letter, our what we call our special knock selection tool template, sample documents. And then we've got about 30 different sample reference letters that you can look at that were all successful, in the past, so that you can see that the form of your letter really isn't super important. It's really the content. So, Alicia, we have burned through the vast majority of our time here. We are pretty much
Wait.
out of...
NAFI says there's just been an FSW draw.
Okay, let's go back here. Let's check it out. Okay, so let's hot off the press.
489,
okay,
guys. CRS is 489.
Okay, I said 488. So, Igor just posted it. So I'm going to have to clear my browsing data first. And then once the browsing data is clear, then I can pull up the round of invitation IRCC, and that should take, there it is. Okay, hot off the press. Let's see what we got going here. Right at the end, this is kind of what it was last time for me too. So there you go. February the 2nd, federal skilled worker. This is actually, what would I call this? This is monumental, okay? There's a reason that this is monumental. It's monumental because never before have they done a federal skilled worker draw. This is the first time ever. Now, the numbers you can see are not super high, 3,300, but they're super targeted like Alicia identified. 489, I said if it was open that it would probably get down to 488. Well, it wasn't going to get down to 488 if they had done it. But 489 FSW alone, which is... they're looking outside of the country. And let's just dive in. So you can see tiebreaker rule is way back. Do you see how far back? This is important to note, you guys. This is something that a lot of people will probably gloss right over. But the tiebreaker rule is March 29, 2022, which means that the vast majority of people that were given this submitted their application, their profile into the pool between basically February, today's the 2nd, between February the 2nd and March 29th, so less than 2 months. And so you can see here that there was a very narrow window that they were able to pull out 3,300 people. So there's a ton more people that submitted profiles after March the 29th, all the way through until today, February the 2nd, that did not receive an invitation to apply. And if you look back here, I want to show you this. If you go to previous rounds, and then we search alone for the immigration program, and we just search it like this, okay, and flip back here. Let's see, we've got a bunch here. I'm trying to sort by topic. So there's Canadian experience class. We'll have to go away a while here. Let's just scroll down. Okay, see this? Do you see this? Federal skilled trades, and then these are all the federal skilled trade draws, and then boom, only one. So only once today, this is the first time that there's ever been a federal skilled worker program only draw. There you go. How about that, you guys? That's quite interesting. Right off the press. So I've got a couple minutes. What do you guys think? You guys have any thoughts on this? Anyone have any ideas? So, yep. Ragav says 489, federal skilled worker. Nafi points out there. Igor's also sent it to us as well. What are your thoughts, Alicia, on that?
Well, I mean, this is really interesting because it means that the government is now specifically trying to open the doors again for all those people outside of Canada who have work experience, high skilled work experience, but not Canadian work experience. And so this is important because, I think maybe people were starting to lose faith in Canada because there was no opportunity for people who weren't already stuck here during the pandemic. And this is, I think, hopefully, immigration saying, we're going to extend an olive branch, and we recognize that people still want to come to Canada who haven't had the privilege of already being here. So the other thing to note is that when you've got that tiebreaker rule from March 29th, 2022, basically your profile needs to be almost a year old, right? You
Almost
needed to
expired.
have, yeah, you needed to be sitting in that pool for literally 11 months before this comes to pass for you. So it rewards those people who have really stuck it out. And I think one of our watchers here at the very beginning was saying, don't lose hope, make sure to
Hmm.
keep the faith, just keep on at it, because who knows what immigration is going to do. And so this is, what are your thoughts on the 483 now? Well, if you're if you're outside Canada, federal skilled worker, you just have a better chance now because immigration has changed the rules. They're playing with a little bit of a different rule book now that they're doing a targeted draw for federal skilled workers.
Hmm. Yeah, Rowena. Oh dear, I'm at FSW and CEC, but 400 CRS only. Yeah, and it's going to be a while, Rowena, for it to get down to that level. Let's see what else the comments are that are coming in. This is actually kind of fun. Yeah, we'll we'll leave this here. We'll leave this up, and let's get there. Let's see. Okay, Armin says so. There'll be separate CEC draws soon. What do you think, Alicia?
Well, 3,300. I mean, maybe they will. Maybe they'll say, okay, we'll do like 900 for PNP only. We'll do 3,300 for FSW. And maybe we'll break it up to do a specific CEC draw where we're going to pull just a segment of people who happen to have a profile between this day and that day and this CRS. Maybe they're doing that. Maybe they're going to get laser targeted on drawing from each of the pools when they want to.
Okay, I'm just telling Igor, I think this is worth having a discussion in a separate video. So I'm going to have him schedule at 1:15. I'm going to go back on live. I'll let you drop off, Alicia, but I'm going to go back on live. Okay. Okay, there. We'll have Igor schedule a live, and we'll do a special one just to talk about this. Let's see what else other people are saying here. Amongst us, our crystal ball needs to be thrown out at this point. I'll give you some applause for that. Kathleen says, this is strange. FSW, what happened to those 5 pillars of M44?
Yeah.
Hey, the pillars are open season. That's really what it is.
Well, so Kathan, to be fair, I mean, the 5 pillars for M44 was, of course, the private members bill that was
Yeah.
talking about how do you provide pathways for permanent residency for people who are already in Canada.
Yeah.
And so the government is going to be working on multiple fronts at once. So they have those mandate of trying to resettle or provide permanent resident pathways for people who are already in Canada. But this might be an acknowledgement under federal skilled worker that they also have a mandate to not lose that additional source of immigrants who are not in Canada, who don't happen to have a study permit or a work permit inside Canada and are really qualified candidates, and they want to bring them to Canada even if they don't have Canadian work experience.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. All right. Well, we'll get just a couple more little comments. AB says, wish they conducted a CEC specific draw for folks who have stuck around in Canada promoting the economy. Raghav says, maybe FSW could be one of the categories from spring onwards, fingers crossed. Well, who knows? I know that at this stage, the minister has tremendous power. He can do whatever his heart desires, right, minister? He, with his newfound authority, and very, very soon you're going to start to see more targeted draws. And this is just one little sampling of what they could do. And yes, it's possible that the minister may choose to pull up a CEC to do a CEC only draw. It's possible that he could, continue in a pattern of doing, PNP and FSW. But I'll be honest, this does seem kind of a little bit interesting given the fact there are so many people in Canada themselves that are looking for pathways forward. in particular, just like the M44 discussion, international students who have gotten these grants of extended work permits, but let's face it, they're going to be running out. So we'll see how this all plays out, you guys. But I think what we'll do is we'll do another special live. I've got just a few minutes to jump in, and Spider-Man will finish with his comment. 20,000 draw in CEC tomorrow. Who knows, my friend? Who knows?
Well, it's a good point, right? Like when we had that February 14th draw, right? When we had all those Valentine's Day, February 13th kind of giant draw under CEC that was really unusual. There is something to be said now. If you meet those minimum eligibility criteria, if you're meeting the pass mark for 67 points on the selection grid, not on CRS, then it is worthwhile probably to put in your express entry profile. And if you're a couple, if you've got a spouse, then maybe both of you put in your express entry profile as the principal applicant with the other spouse accompanying, because we don't know what they're targeting these days. We have no idea clearly because everything is changing very quickly. So you might as well maximize your chances and get your express entry profiles in.
Exactly. That's all we can do, Rowena, is laugh. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in, and it was great to have everybody here. Thank you, Alicia, for your time. It was great to have our guest, Deborah, who joined us to share her positive experience about getting her permanent residence after a little bit of adversity. A first application that got rejected, and then she retained us to help. And you know what, Alicia, that's when a lot of people do reach out to us. When they run into walls, they're not sure what to do. Here, I'll just keep you in here on this one. You can see here that for those of you who are not aware, yes, you can hire us to help you with your application, and it's direct lawyer to client collaboration. So this is a situation where you work directly with us and we help you through the whole process of your application. Speak to a lawyer. That's all you need to do to get the process started. So if you are one of the lucky people that received a round of invitation in this crazy draw here, we're here to help you. All right. Thanks so much, Alicia, for tuning in. Everybody else,